Welcome to All Electric Conversations, where we talk with pioneers in traveling with electric vehicles. We're your hosts, Katie and Steve Krivolovic of the All Electric family. From road trips and towing to daily life, we'll hear stories of wanderlust and progress to inspire your own adventures with All Electric Conversations. Welcome to another All Electric Conversations podcast, and today we are lucky enough to have Cory Steuben here with us. And he is from Munro Associates, or Munro Live. You may have seen him on some of their YouTube videos and such. And we are lucky enough to have him in person because he is from Nebraska. And so, we wanted to sit down and chat with him and talk a little bit about, Munro Associates and how a guy goes from, Nebraska to president of Munro Associates and a little bit about you.
Awesome. Yeah, so where do you want to start? I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, let's start there.
And we are actually about 1.5 miles away from where I grew up. So
Oh, nice.
I grew up, if you're from Lincoln and you're watching, right by Mahoney Park.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at 74th and Colfax over
Yeah.
there. But all my siblings still live here, and they live relatively close. My brother lives in Waterford Estates. My sister lives over by Layton, and my other sister lives on the other side of Layton.
Okay.
So
Yeah, all close.
I packed all my kids and my dog in my vehicle, and I drove here for spring break because my parents, because of COVID, they haven't seen my young kids very often.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm here.
Awesome.
Yeah, but to answer your question, it's a long story of how I went from Nebraska to Michigan to be president of Munro. But essentially, I went to Michigan for engineering school.
Okay.
I studied at Kettering University, which is heavily tied to the automotive industry. And Munro Associates had co-ops. So Kettering has a co-op program where you have to work 3 months, school 3 months, work 3 months. And I happened to end up at Munro Associates because my dad was a mechanic, and on my resume, I had all my mechanic skills. And Munro, doing a lot of teardowns, they wanted to hire an intern. They didn't have to train how to use tools or worry about injuring themselves taking stuff apart. So I ended up at Michigan for engineering school, ended up at Munro because my dad was a mechanic. And then I stuck it out. So 18 years at Munro Associates, I kind of worked my way up the ladder, did tons of consulting in other industries, aerospace, defense, and medical, a long stint in automotive. Then I shifted to management in 2020, and then the pandemic hit. And it was my idea to create Munro Live to get the word out about our Model Y teardown. We had already ordered a Model Y to do a teardown, and it showed up 3 or 4 days before Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, shut the state down. So we were able to film and release those videos kind of a few weeks after that, and we kind of caught the world's attention, and we've doubled and tripled down on that. And here we are. So, and we met in Vegas, right?
Yeah.
You were at CES?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do appreciate you inviting us to that, and so that was a lot of fun getting to know you and your team and some other fellow YouTubers, and so and then we found out that you were from Lincoln, so that even made it better.
Yeah. So what did you guys cover at CES? What was your favorite thing there?
Oh gosh. I think for me, it was just the sheer number of electric vehicles that were there when we went. I don't think I was quite expecting there to be so many electric vehicles. I was expecting more like tech and that kind of a thing. And then if I had to pick like one specific thing, I think it would probably be Magna and the heavy duty pickup truck drivetrain that they're working on, because that, is right up our alley with towing and everything. But I don't know if you had anything different than that.
No, Magna sticks out quite a bit.
Yeah.
To me, there was also what was it? What was that new car that's coming out? I can't remember. It's from
The VinFast.
Yeah.
The VinFast.
Yeah.
VF8 and VF9.
Yeah, and so that was interesting getting in that and riding in it. Definitely didn't feel like a lot of the new electric vehicles, and so just for me anyways, didn't feel like it was that great of quality and stuff like that. So most electric vehicles that I've been in have been really good quality, and so I've always assumed that that's what was always going to come to the market with electric vehicles, but to me it wasn't that great. So
Yeah, with the VinFast, Sandy and I actually went to Vietnam and toured their factory.
nice.
They have like a 9 million square foot factory. They're iterating really fast. So although people haven't been too impressed with the interior quality, fit and finish, some of the software functionality. Where they were at 4 to 5 years ago, essentially leasing BMW platforms and making internal combustion engine vehicles that were based off like the X5 and the M3, to now quickly abandoning that and switching to EV. And how, when we were in Vietnam, we saw how fast everything was iterating there. So kind of like how people kind of discounted Hyundai and Kia in the 90s because they entered the market with less than ideal quality and really odd products that didn't really fit the American market. Some of the Hyundai and Kia products are absolutely world beaters now. They're very top mark, very top notch. So I'd say with VinFast, give them 3-5 years, and if they continue to improve at the pace that they've done already, I think they may actually make some products people might want in the United States.
Nice. And I know you guys were there at CES, and so can you explain what you guys were doing there?
Yeah, so we attended CES before as attendees, and we'd walk around and whatnot before the YouTube channel, and then after. So we went in 2021, and we stood in a booth for a connector company. It's called Ariso. We stood in the booth. We said, hey, we're going to be in this booth, and we drew traffic to that booth, particularly for Sandy, not for me. I'm just there. Sandy really is the star of Munro Live. And it worked so well that the next year, that connector company's like, hey, do you want to split the booth? And then you can have half the booth for yourself. So we did. And if you've ever been to CES or if you've ever been to a show, it costs us $200,000 for that booth and to send all the people. So because just the square footage alone is $50,000 to $70,000 for the square footage we had. That's just the cement. Then you have to use like union labor to set everything up and to rig all of the electronics. And we rented that screen was $15,000 to rent a 10-foot by 10-foot screen. And then we had like $5,000 worth of giveaways. And we had tremendous traffic at the booth. We brought 12 people to work it. And we have a lot of leads from that. So although many people know us from the YouTube channel, we're an engineering firm. So we have probably a dozen leads where people came up and said, oh, yeah, Munro Live. Oh, yeah. And then now we're pursuing engineering projects with tier 1s, tier 2s, smaller suppliers, and a few OEMs from CES. So there's the content creation aspect. We filmed a lot in the booth. Sandy was interviewed by one of the top YouTubers in, man, I'm going to get this wrong. I don't even know. It was Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, George Buscini. I can't remember, but he has like 3 million followers on Twitter and 1 million followers on his YouTube channel. Plus a lot of other smaller YouTubers would interview Sandy right there, like Ellie in Space. I don't know if you're familiar. Yeah. And I was actually just interviewed on Ellie in Space, and that released on Saturday, just yesterday. That was just like a Zoom meeting because she broke her leg recently. I don't know if you followed.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, yeah, rough.
But we also walked around the show and did probably a dozen pieces of content. I got to ride in the Mercedes-Benz. It was a Mercedes-Benz EQXX. Did you get around that?
Not in the Mercedes, no.
Yeah, so we did a piece on that. We did a thing with Texas Instruments. They make a corner module that's electrified. So it's always good to go to CES because then you're just in the know, you're around people. There's a lot of events and dinners. So was this your first time?
It was, yeah. It was kind of on a whim. We were like, we don't really fully know what it's about. You know, you hear about it every year, but we were like, but let's just go try it out. And so we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks to you guys.
Yeah.
Prompting us.
Oh, yeah. No
problem. On our radar. You invited us and we're like, we should go.
I didn't realize we were the genesis for you coming. A lot of people go there no matter what.
Yeah.
So I just assumed you were going to be there.
And now we will be because we did get a lot of stuff out of it and a lot of connections and stuff like you were talking about. And so we just were like, well, now this is going to have to be an every year thing. So we had fun.
Yeah. You said there was a lot of stuff there, and that's accurate. It is a bit overwhelming in the beginning, and so we think we have an idea of what we need to do moving forward. So.
Yeah. So I want to know a little bit more about how you started your channel. So
yeah.
Can you go through that?
Yeah.
Is it 2018, 17?
So, gosh, I don't even know. Well, yeah, probably, because it was I think we're coming on 5 years now, and we actually started as we were called Trail Less Travel when we first started, and we were really more RV centered. And, you know, we kind of had a thought of potentially one day maybe like going full time and living in our RV and traveling and documenting that. But, you know, life always just throws you curveballs and you go different ways. And, you know, we figured out that we weren't going to be able to do that. We weren't going to be able to just take off and go. And so then we knew we were going to have more like local and close trips. And Steve had a Model S previously and really wanted to go back to having a Tesla. And so he was like, I think we could tow with a Tesla. That might be kind of fun to do some videos on. And so he was doing all the research. I was like, hey, if I get to drive a Model X, I'll let you tow with it. So then we started documenting that. And then that's when it really took off. Inside EVs started covering our stuff. Like there wasn't really anybody towing with an EV at that point that was documenting it. And so then it's just kind of grown from there. So
yeah, and your channel has what, a couple million views, 2.5 million?
Yeah, we're getting up there. Yep. So it's just continues to. It's really funny because, you know, we'll do the other stuff and the other stuff's okay because, you know, when you're stuck in Nebraska in the middle of winter, you can't always be towing a camper around. But then we throw up towing with a camper again, and it just takes off. And so
good or bad.
So you have your videos, you know, will do well.
Yeah.
And then you try other stuff that sometimes doesn't do well.
Yeah. Just
we've moved more into the education side of it.
Yeah.
More recently. Yeah. Those seem to do pretty well. And I think it's definitely needed too. That, you know, just trying to bring it down to regular people's level, because I can talk about kilowatt hours and all this stuff all day long, you know, but most of the time people don't really want I know much of that.
I have an idea for the two of you. So, well, first of all, at Munro, we do something called an EV primer. So there's a lot of companies in Michigan, suppliers, tier 1s, tier 2s, OEMs, that they want to educate their engineers on what our EV's about. And we have a really deep knowledge because we've torn down like essentially over a dozen of them in the near recent past. So we charge anywhere from, I think, $7,000 to $20,000 for a short half-day course with lunch.
Yeah.
And they love it. The feedback is really positive. They call it an EV primer. It's a PowerPoint presentation. We go over all the ins and outs, the battery form factors, the layouts, the you know, kind of insights that we've gathered. You could do a primer on towing. So like an EV towing primer, but you could target it to like dealerships. So like dealerships that sell trucks, where if they sell trucks and they want to tow, you could go give a course, or like when they buy it, they could, you know, sign up. Yeah. And with your production capability, you know, with the channel, you could actually record it in advance. So have you ever thought about doing?
Yeah, we've actually, well, we kind of are dipping our toes in a little bit. We are going to, we think, they said that they're sending schedules, so we're pretty sure we're on the schedule at this point. We just don't know when. But going actually to the International Airstream Rally and doing a talk on towing there. With an EV, towing with an EV and stuff. And so, you know, we're kind of dipping our toes in on getting courses and teaching people how to do it, because there's just, not a lot out there on it yet. So, but that's a really good idea to, especially like the dealerships and stuff, because even when you go to an RV dealer, sometimes they don't even know how to hook it up to a truck. You know, and then you put an EV and it's a whole other level. I mean, think about when we went to go pick up our trailer for the Model X.
Definitely a good idea, especially when you're talking about some of these people that don't really have a good inkling on what it's like to tow with an electric vehicle. And just be, real with them. That's what we've always wanted to do with our community, is just show them all of it, the good, the bad, and anything in between. And, and then also give them tips on how to manage it too, because there is, a lot of tips to be had with that. We have created a course, haven't released it yet, for a company just on EV road tripping. And so that would definitely go along those lines too. And just our idea is to do some webinars and things like that to get good and practiced with the whole EV towing aspect.
So one more question. So with all electric being the name of your channel, what's your thoughts on EVs with range extenders. So like Ram, Stellantis, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
They're most likely going to release an EV that'll have a decent range, probably 150 or 200 miles of EV range with a range extender, which could make it up to 500 miles of range. Are you still going to dip your toe in analyzing that to compare and contrast it? Or is it like a religious thing? Like, no, EV only? Because we get lambasted when we'll take PHEVs, we get them as press vehicles, and we'll look at the interior, we'll look at the exterior, and we'll do reviews on them, like 6 or 7 reviews, and people in the comments are like, this isn't an EV. It's like we're cheating on people. And it's like, hey, give us a break. You know, it's a free car. I drove it home. But at least it's a free tank of gas because they drop it off,
That's
either fully charged or with free gas. So I'll take it home a few days. But what's your thoughts on that, the range extenders?
Yeah, the range extenders specifically, like we'll definitely dip our toes in with that because, you know, just like I've heard you talk before, like these electric motors have been in big vehicles for a long time. They just have a diesel generator behind it. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And so, you know, you got to try it. And we've even talked about doing some trips where an electric vehicle can't even really get to, but taking a generator. And I know we'll get the same thing where it's like, well, you should have charged it up from the sun. You know, it's like, well, that would have taken 2 months. So, like, just because, you know, as technology evolves, those things are going to become easier and easier, but we still want to show how you can take this electric vehicle and put it in places that, you know, infrastructure hasn't, you know, yet taken it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, and we recently tore down a Hummer EV with that massive battery. So we may have videos to come on that. And it's I think it was like 2,400 pounds. We had to make special accommodations. We had to buy a special metal table for the battery to sit on because the vehicle was so heavy. Our lift is a 12,000 pound lift. The vehicle is 9,600 pounds. The battery is 2,400 pounds. And we had to it was super complicated. Usually when we're dealing with, you know, Model 3 or the Ioniq or the Model Y, it's not that big a deal when you're dealing with a 6,000 pound vehicle, a 1,000 pound battery. But anyways, my point was the battery is huge, and it's, you know, they're lithium-ion pouch-style cells, which aren't that efficient from a gravimetric and a volumetric perspective. So Sandy and I have spent a lot of time reaching out to battery companies, particularly solid-state battery companies, and we interview the CEO, we get a factory tour. So we did QuantumScape in San Jose. We just did SES in Boston. We met their CEO, Chi-Chow Hu, and really impressive, 450 watt hours per kilogram. And then Amprius, a company out of Fremont, California, just announced slightly over 500 watt hours per kilogram. Now, the reason this is important is for towing. Now, if you want to get that 250, 300 kilowatt hour battery pack in a large truck, that's the only way you're going to get there. Is with a breakthrough in the gravimetric density. So you're not carrying 3,000 or 4,000 pounds. So you can carry a 2,000 pound battery pack that has that 300 kilowatt hour number, or 250 to 350 kilowatt hour, because now you're talking some serious range. So you mentioned technological breakthroughs. I think we're still probably 5 to 12 years away before we see them in vehicles, and they'll start with high performance needs, towing or high performance sports cars, where you want to get the mass down around the mass of an internal combustion engine vehicle, which is much lighter. And that's why the Stellantis just released the Challenger that does 1.66 0 to 60. Their big advantage was they can put 1,100 horsepower in that vehicle, put some huge tires on the back, and they don't have that 1,000 pound battery underneath. So the vehicle's lighter. And it only has the driver's seat. So EVs are amazing unless you're trying to go really, really fast or really, really far.
Yeah.
So then how would you say these batteries that you're talking about compare to the 4680 cells that I know you guys have recently torn down?
So you have to look at batteries in 2 groups, economy cells and performance cells. So if you're trying to do mass market EVs, you want economy cells, cells that are easy to manufacture using low cost materials. So LFP, lithium iron phosphate, are your real economy cells, but they're not that great from a volumetric and gravimetric perspective. So if you buy a standard range Tesla Model 3 or Y, they have CATL LFP cells in. It's about 50 kilowatt hours, and it fills up the entire space that the 2170s, which are NCMA, nickel, cobalt, manganese, aluminum, and that you get 82 kilowatt hours. So you get 32 more kilowatt hours in the same volume and the same mass. But LFP batteries are a little better from a charging perspective. So the Rivians that you have use, I think, Samsung 2170s. We tore down a bunch of, we have a couple Rivians, and they're using the similar cells as the Model 3 and Model Y because you get a lot of energy density per unit volume. I know I'm repeating myself.
No, it's good.
So you go economy cells and then performance cells. So when you go economy, 4680 really is an economy cell. And I said this once, a lot of people on Twitter and in the YouTube channel, they're like, no, but Elon said it's going to be so much better. Well, the issue with the 4680, it's so much wider and they choose to cool on the side. The mean distance to the center is longer. So it's 46 instead of 21. That's why the Plaid uses 18650s, because the distance from the side to the center is shorter. So their ability to cool the cells is better when you're dealing with even the 18650s. The 2170s, 4680s get bigger. So when you buy a Model 3 or Model Y, well, actually a Model Y with 4680s, because Tesla cools from the side, they're not going to be able to cool it in a way that allows you to get that massive amount of performance and heat rejection that you get that you'll need for like towing or for high performance. So economy, I put the 4680 in with LFP as economy, and then the higher end chemistries that are using cobalt, manganese, aluminum, those are more for high performance. And then you get ultra high performance with lithium metals. So when we visited SES Battery, they had a titanium laminate that's actually for aerospace that they deposit the lithium on, and it's like incredibly light versus copper. So copper is expensive and heavy. Titanium is really expensive and lighter, and they even like laser etched like little hexagonal spaces in it. It's we had a video. The video is coming out next week.
Yeah.
But when you hold it in your hand, it's like a butterfly wing. You can't even feel it, like the lithium and the titanium.
Yeah.
But so SES is claiming 450 watt hours per kilogram. That's all the way on the other side of the scale of cost and performance.
Yeah.
So I don't think that actually answers your question, but you have to kind of, 4680 is over in the economy cell.
I believe that definitely did answer the question, because it's not necessarily like a total game changer for all electric vehicles. It is more for the economy, for the scale of that. And so have they released on their Tesla Semi, are they putting those 4680 cells, or are they putting something else?
I don't remember. When Sandy and we got invited to Investor Day, we got to walk around and tour a Semi, but I couldn't see the batteries, nothing. Obviously,
can't tear it apart.
Now, I know this is going to be on the internet sometime. I don't know, but I thought they're using 2170.
Okay.
I thought that was the case.
Well, from what you were explaining, it would make more sense.
Yeah.
Before. So,
yeah.
So, one of the things I want to talk about too is you were talking about kind of the economy and more the performance side. So that goes into cost and all that. So why are current electric vehicles so expensive? And, is there a route to get them cheaper?
Oh, this is a great question. So let's go back 30 years. My first vehicle was a 1991 Nissan Maxima. This goes beyond electric versus non-electric. So my 1991 Nissan Maxima was made primarily with mild steel, no ultra-high strength steel. It had no airbags, no anti-lock brakes, and a very basic electrical system with not a lot of features. It sold for, I think, $16,000 to $23,000 back in 1991. If you factor in inflation, that vehicle today would cost $23,000 to $35,000. That $25,000 mark. But could Nissan sell a 1991 Maxima now? No. It would not pass roof crush. It would not pass the SORB test. It doesn't have any airbags. It did have seat belts. So there's a tremendous amount of cost not associated with electric vehicles that are in every car you buy. From 2016 or 17 on, all vehicles have to pass this Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard test called FMVS 226, which means because there's so many more SUVs on the road, they realized that people were rolling their SUVs and children and pets and luggage were getting ejected on rollovers. So there's a law that I think after 17, your airbags have to deploy below the belt line to retain your passengers because they can't rely on rear passengers being belted. So it's actually a safety standard covering for the fact that they can't get people to belt in the back. Well, what does that do? That drives cost into the vehicles. The A-pillars get bigger, and because you have bigger airbags going all the way back in the car, that means you have to use even more expensive steel to keep the size of the A-pillar small enough so that you can actually see when you're turning a corner. So these are the types of decisions that I've dealt with for years and years and years. Now, that would make just a standard car you're buying with a 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder gas engine and a regular transmission in the mid-20s. Now add fuel economy regulations. Fuel economy standards are so much higher just for internal combustion engine vehicles that now you'll see high feature engines, so variable valve timing, direct injection, mild hybrid systems. So that was adding thousands of dollars to the powertrains of internal combustion engine vehicles. So it was already a stretch to make money in that $25,000 to $30,000 range. That's why the average transaction price for vehicles is in the 40s, 42, 45, 46,000. Now add electrification. So that was my whole program. It's already hard to make money in the automotive industry. An automobile is a symphony of thousands of parts. It's incredible that people expect them to be such a low price. Now you electrify. Batteries are expensive, very expensive. The thermal systems that heat and cool the battery are also expensive, and OEMs did not have decades of developing them. So when we first saw EVs, what did they do? They jammed a battery in their internal combustion engine platform. It was inefficiently hung onto the car. It was inefficient in the way the pack was made. The thermal systems were off-the-shelf components, commercial off-the-shelf components, and then you had lines running everywhere. And we criticized the Mach-E because it looked like a rat's nest of hoses and lines when we took the frunk off. Now you get to a point where the MPGE for EVs is below 100. That's horrible for a sedan. You really need your MPGE to be 120 to 130. That's the indication that an OEM knows what they're doing. And so now I'm going to circle back to costs. So some of the best EVs that are efficient in how they design the batteries and thermal systems and the rest of the vehicle have a high MPGE, the lowest battery size possible for the most range. That's what you want, because if you're carrying a smaller battery, then you don't have to size up the rest of the vehicle to pass all these existing crash tests and durability requirements. But a battery costs anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000. So add that to the cost of bill of material. Now you really have to sell an EV for $42,000 to $50,000 to make any semblance of net profit. And what does Tesla do? They sell their vehicles from $42,000 up to 120, 30,000. But really, I'm talking Model Y, Model 3, which are more mainstream. They really get to about 70 for the Model Y. And a lot of OEMs are struggling, and Ford just announced that they expect to lose money with their Model E group for, I think, the next 2 years. They said we're going to turn a profit in 2026. And these breakthroughs in battery technology and really how vehicles are designed, I think you'll see a wave of new generation vehicles coming from VW, Stellantis, Toyota, once they get their stuff together. And if they emulate what we see from some of the startups, like Rivian's actually pretty good in some sense in how they do their high voltage system and their battery and their thermal system. Tesla is like world leading when it comes to efficiency from a cost and weight perspective. And I think you'll see a lot of catch up happening. But then Tesla announced at Investor Day another huge step change in how vehicles are assembled. I don't know if you caught that. That is like the paradigm shift that needs to happen to get the cost down in the 30,000 range. Now, everybody says 25,000. I think 30,000 is fine. We have inflation, you know. Yeah. So that's my long answer. An automobile is way more complex than electrified versus not electrified. We still have all these vestigial requirements for safety and fuel, not fuel economy, but safety and then the efficiency associated with the EV systems. It really drives a ton of cost into the vehicle.
And I would assume too that having all of this manufacturing and stuff done a certain way and trying to shift it, you know, takes time, it takes money to figure that stuff out.
Oh yeah.
So, and maybe that's what
It's money in the development of it.
Yeah.
You're figuring it out.
And maybe that's what Tesla introduced at their investor day, was how they were going to manufacture them in a more economical way. And then also all of the technology and stuff that we expect with some of these electric vehicles is, I would imagine, pretty expensive as well. You know, like self-driving and, you know, ADAS, is that what it's called?
ADAS, yeah. Yeah, and that's another thing that has kind of blended together is Tesla sells all their vehicles with the FSD3 or FSD4 board. Now, we do cost analysis, and we cost that whole board out. It's north of $1,000 for that board with those two high-end discrete Tesla chips. There's multiple boards in there, and it even has to be thermally cooled. And only, I think, adoption of FSD beta or people who pay is only 14% or 16%, somewhere in that range. So that means 84% of Teslas out there on the road aren't using the full capability. So that means Tesla is giving away those processors. But we oftentimes talk with this really smart guy. His name's Thomas Mueller. He works for a company called Wipro. He knows everything about the software and how they collect the data and whatnot. And other OEMs, the requirements is you have to have redundant computers. So Tesla has all these circuit boards and chips, all these chips on the circuit board, and they have the exact same chips and circuit board right here. But what Tesla does, they're on the same board, they have separate power feeds. One of them is doing the work of collecting the data from all the sensors and processing the real-world data and driving the car if needed. The other one is running a validation script, he said. He says, really novel. Another OEM from Germany has, I think they have level 3 autonomy. They have one circuit board and chip doing all of that, and the other one is a separate unit sitting in the trunk, and it's doing nothing. And it's about $700 or $1,000 for this. So Tesla is about 8 years ahead of the competition in collecting this wide range of data, because they collect the data and they're processing it. They send it back to the mothership, and they use the Dojo chip to process and validate all the real world data. So that's like a 5-hour conversation if you go into the lead that they have when it comes to collecting data. So even the super low cost vehicle that Tesla is bragging about, the $25,000 or $30,000 EV, it will have all of this functionality. And I've said recently that I think Tesla is experimenting with removing ultrasonic sensors and radar because if you buy a Model S Plaid now, it doesn't have ultrasonic sensors in the front. It does have radar, I believe, but these are expensive components. It's like $1 billion decision to go without those sensors and radar if you factor in how many cars they sell a year. And I think they're experimenting with, can they do this with just cameras? Because cameras are cheap. Cameras are not expensive. And I think hardware 4 now is little 5-megapixel cameras. And if you can get away with doing this with just cameras, you can deploy this globally at a much lower cost. So that circles back to the cost number. I feel like they're pulling the radar. They pulled the radar out of the Model Y, partly because maybe chip constraints. And now they've been able to test with and without radar, with and without ultrasonic sensors, with and without 3-megapixel cameras to 5-megapixel cameras. They've had so much learning over the last 5 years. It's just incredible. And in the next 2 to 3 years, you may see other OEMs deploy similar systems, but they would that's their starting line. That's when they're going to start to collect data. So it's kind of wild.
That is wild. I could go down that rabbit hole and ask you a bazillion questions, but I will spare Katie.
Hey, I'm learning lots, and I love it. Like, it's so fascinating, and it is like when you stop and you think about how much goes into just a vehicle, and then the EV side of it on top of it, and all of this stuff. And it's kind of something, because we've been getting a lot of the it's too expensive for me comments a lot lately, and I'm like, yeah, but think about how much thought and testing and energy is just going into like developing all of this and making it work so for every vehicle on the road. I'm like, that is there's an ungodly amount of money just in that alone, so it's fascinating to me too.
Yeah, I would agree. And then, so you've worked on a ton of different projects. How long have you been at Munro Associates?
18 years.
18 years.
I'm in my 18th year.
Yeah.
I kind of lose track. I think I'll actually hit the 18-year anniversary in September or something.
Nice. So along that way, like, what is kind of the craziest project that you've worked on, something that people wouldn't think that Munro Associates worked on?
Crazy. I won't say crazy, but just, unique things. Yeah. I have worked on a rice planter, made for the Asian market. I've worked on skid steers, which are like bobcats, front loaders. I've worked on the scope for a gun. I've supported an air conditioning unit for the military. I spent 3 months in Brazil supporting the development of a plane for Embraer.
Nice.
Yeah, we're doing some lean design training and workshops there. And then some of the odd stuff I'm most proud of is the most boring. So I can't really say the OEM, but it was in Michigan, and it was the development of a new vehicle essentially from scratch. And it started in 2011 and went all the way through 2017. So the sketch phase, we were working with a group like Advanced Concept Engineering, and I was able to save the spare tire. They were going to get rid of it. They wanted it. They were going to get rid of it, and they decided they need it. And I was able to put a whole packet of information to show them that they could package it in the rear quarter, and it was a collapsible spare. And I fought a lot of battles with the packaging engineers about the tire envelope. They had a requirement that it had to be able to withstand hitting a curb at 25 miles an hour in reverse in a parking lot. And that caused the tire envelope, meaning the max, distance the tire could travel in the wheel well, was like really far out in one direction. Well, I got them to drop that requirement, and it shrunk the tire envelope crazy so that it could fit. And then how that rear shock mounts on that vehicle, they had a design, because they were using tooling in the plant that had vertical screws. It was called a Kuka pallet, and they wanted to maintain these vertical screws. So they had this aluminum cup, and it was like $3 for both sides and 3 pounds, and then all the structure in the body to react. When all the other OEMs, look at Honda or Ford, they had a bar like this with 2 holes, and they just screwed it in the side, and it was in shear, and it saved 7 pounds and $7 on every vehicle that was ever made. So if one of those vehicles drove by and parked in a parking lot, I would get it, bend down and look in the rear wheel, because I know that if I wouldn't have fought that, the vehicle would have went to production 7 pounds heavier, $7 more. But they make $250,000 a year. So whatever 7 times $250,000 times 15 years they'll make that.
Yeah.
That's the value we bring. So I'm kind of proud of these like weird battles that I fought back when I was in my 20s.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I have to ask, so if somebody has just, caught some of your like teardown videos, right? Like they haven't dug into the heart of like what Munro and Associates does. Like what would you say? Like what is at the heart of what you guys do? What's your goals? What are you aiming to do in the world?
So we are a catalyst for change. So Sandy likes to say it's 90% psychology and 10% technology. So understanding technology and benchmarking is only 10% of it. So we pride ourselves on being able to actually impact an organization's design and their products for good. And it may seem like a lot of a consultancy speak, but we recently had a workshop with a large OEM, and we compared their vehicle versus a few other vehicles, and they were blown away with the quality of the ideas and the context that comes behind them, because we've seen thousands of bad ideas. So we know how to weed out bad ideas, and then how we deliver those is in a real collaborative way. We purposefully train our employees to speak with we. So if that OEM is in the building, they won't say, you need to do this or you need to do that. We don't point. And we don't ever want to take the credit. We want to have our client realize that we're in it for them. And then they come away feeling like, man, these are good ideas. We should change the clips on the harness for the rear fascia. Like, these are small, impactful ideas that roll up to substantial savings and improvement. And we work on anything from refrigerators to exercise equipment to grills, smokers, cell phones. We're way beyond the automotive industry, and a lot of people don't realize that. We actually tried to do a couple fridge teardowns on our channel. They went horribly. The first video got, I don't know, like 60,000 views. The second got like 20,000. And then the third we scrapped, and we actually ended up selling the fridges. We were going to do a Sub-Zero fridge versus like a low-end Frigidaire.
Yeah.
And show, is it worth it? 14,000 versus 2,000.
Yeah.
And we tried to dip our toe in a different segment.
Yeah.
We backed out.
Yeah.
So is it worth it?
It depends on if you're invested in staying somewhere a long time.
Okay.
Because the repairability of a Sub-Zero over time, if the compressor goes out after 12 or 15 years, you can get it fixed. It's less of a throwaway item. It's more of a heirloom fridge.
Yeah.
And I feel like the styling and the function and of all the drawers and the compartments inside, they kind of stand the test of time.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah. Now that we lost everybody.
yeah. Sorry.
No, I asked.
Yeah, you took it there. You took it there.
That's really cool to hear that you guys have worked on all that different stuff, and and I'm sure going to be around for a long time, and kind of solidifying yourself definitely in the automotive industry with what you guys are accomplishing, and then also in the public eye too with Munro Live. I know the answer to this, but who was the person that thought of that?
Oh, Munro Live?
Yeah.
Oh, it was my idea. Credit is oftentimes given to lots of different people, but I was the one who executed it. I bought the domain munrolive.com on March 20th of 2020 on my personal GoDaddy account. And I created Munro Live channel with a brand new Gmail account because I had asked for the login of our corporate YouTube channel, which still exists, by the way. It's called Munro Associates. It has 14 videos on it from 2008 until now, and it only has 140,000 views and like 800 subscribers. And I think 600 have come since we created our channel because they get
Yeah.
But I asked for the login for that, and at the time we had a PR firm that managed it, and they said, "Oh no, you don't know how to create content," and they wouldn't give me access to it. So Munro Live was kind of created like, well, I'm the president of the company. I'll just create something. And and then we've kind of forged ahead with that. And we're actually launching a secondary channel called Munro Live Podcast. Okay. We're building a podcast studio. It's actually going to look similar to this. We're going to have a big table, enough 4 mics, roadcaster, lighting. whole thing's filled with sound deadening foam and stuff. And we've lined up our first 7 or 8 interviews. Nice. Some other YouTubers, maybe I'll consider the 2 of you. Yeah. But we want it to be in person. So some other YouTubers and then a lot of other, industry guests, engineers, chief engineers and stuff. But we've already had a lot of pretty decent people interviewed. We've had, Elon, Jim Farley, RJ Scringe, we interviewed him. And then a couple of chief engineers from Ford and some CEOs of battery companies. But
when we started the podcast, like we kind of just, this will be episode 13 now, I think. So, it's pretty new, but we kind of were like, we should probably do this, all of the things say you should have a podcast. And so we kind of drug our feet on it for a while, and then we started doing it, and it's kind of becoming one of our favorite things. Just sit down and have conversations with people and talk about like all that's going on, learn their stories, talking to like people like you that have all of this knowledge, and people that just go out and do it and talking about their experiences and stuff. Because, like we can talk about what we do over and over again, but it's just fun to get that extra element in it. So and I think you guys will have enough of a pull that you'll be able to get some really fun names and people in there that are going to be great to have on.
And what's the plan? What's the long-term plan for your channel and your efforts? Do you still have some day jobs or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. We both own businesses. We both are full-time with that, and we're doing this on the side. And, it's funny because I always say, I'm like, I went into the family business of education and childcare and that kind of a thing. But we're really, I started making like a newsletter for Hanson, like the MBOP guys, like way back in, like when I was in middle school online, and I wanted to make a website for him and stuff, but everything was so new then, my mom and dad were like, I don't know how you're going to make money doing that, so then you're like, you take a turn and you go, okay, well, I'll go do something that's known. And so it's kind of always been my passion to create content and that kind of stuff. And so, when YouTube became what it was, and I was like, oh, I want to do this just for fun, just for my side, just to have a hobby. Mm-hmm. And so it's been continuing to grow. So, potentially one day I could hopefully maybe just do the channel and stuff and try to make that what I do, because I do love doing it. I love creating content and putting stuff out there and helping people. Again, it still kind of comes back to my education. I like helping people learn and helping to, inspire people to do what they want to do and just take life by the horns and do what you want. So
we want to continue to educate people on towing with electric vehicle. Katie is the driving force behind most of this stuff, but recently came up with a EV RV rally, and it's inviting people out to a rally where we bring people in and have talks about kind of what we were talking about earlier, EVs in general, camping in general, and then also towing with an EV. And so this is our second year that we'll be having that. And so we're just really kind of getting started with some of that stuff. But we just want to expand that and continue to, meet people like you and, in the future, go
in general,
go to the Airstream rally, connect with people there, and just, everywhere. CES, fully charged, like all this stuff.
Are you going to a fully charged?
We haven't put it on the calendar yet, but we want to. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I went to fully charged San Diego last year. I spoke on a panel. It was like a 20-minute panel, and there was 5 people up there, so I spoke for 2 minutes or something. If you do the math, the most I get is 5. But the fully charged people are great. Do you know Robert Llewellyn?
No.
The guy who founded it?
Yeah, know of him, but I haven't ever had a chance to connect with him or anything.
Yes, we know Robert really well. See, so just the connections.
Yeah.
If you ever wanted an introduction to anyone, let me know.
All right.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, we'd like to move also into the direction of road tripping with a family, going to like an Airbnb that has that's EV friendly, that has an EV charger, just to show the ease. If you seek that out, that makes life much easier with an electric vehicle. Just once again, going back to the education side of it. all the stuff that we really enjoy, but we also know newcomers to the electric vehicle space are really going to want to do the years of research and figure that stuff out. So, yeah.
Just showing, a little bit is what possible. We're trying to, see if we can figure out timing and life work stuff to tow the camper to like Alaska or Baja California or so like we want to show people like you can't, if you're not afraid of it, it works, and have fun and travel and see the world and do all that stuff. So
and you live in Lincoln, one of my favorite cities.
Yes it is a great town. I love it.
This morning I went for a run. I did like a tour of Lincoln. I ran all the way to Bryan LGH. Well, it's not called that anymore. It's just called Bryan. And then I went to Holmes Lake, ran up the dam, around the lake, and then I went out to 112th and A. And then through the dirt roads and back here. So I got to see all sorts of familiar sights. It's amazing what it does to the mind, because I lived here for 18 years. And as I'm running on Cotner Boulevard and by the mall, it's just like all these memories are coming back of me, like riding in the car with my dad and my mom and going to the dentist in that building. I'm like, it's like nostalgia on steroids. So I think I named my run Nostalgia Run or something.
Nice.
Yeah. It's a good town, a great place to grow up and raise kids and all that good stuff. So
too bad our football team's not very good. So what's your thought on Matt Rule?
My thought is I think that his kind of record speaks really well for him, like a long-standing record. So I think that he'll be a great fit for Nebraska as far as like his core beliefs too. Like I think we need that in a coach. Feel like we haven't had that for a while, and so I think he's centered around family, and so I think it's gonna be really good. But she's KU girl, so
so we got knocked out of the tournament, so I'm depressed. So it's fine.
At least you made the tournament. Nebraska hasn't even made the NIT since like Teron Lude days or something. Remember that?
Exactly.
Been a while. But we're coming up at about that time. So, but it was great to have you on.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome conversation. Always love digging in deep. And any closing arguments?
No arguments. Just thank you very much, and we'll see you around.
Awesome. Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Find all of our show notes at allelectricfamily.com/allelectricconversations. Be sure to connect with us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at All Electric Family. Find us on Twitter as All Electric Fam. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed this story, please be sure to share it and hit that subscribe button. Leave a review and help inspire others to hit the road. Until next time, stay charged.